Hey folks, welcome to Market Technical Analysis by InTheMoneyStocks.com for October 25th, 2007. Again, today was an interesting day for this one reason. Yesterday we saw a monster rally late in the day. Basically starting at 2 o'clock all the way into the close, we just rallied up and up and up. And for the second time today, even though we gapped up today for a little difference there, we still sold off hard again. And at one point the Nasdaq was as much down by 30 plus points, even upwards of 40 here, and at the same time the Nasdaq was able to rally back, but the S&P and the Dow were really the leaders here again. And this is the interesting dichotomy. The difference here that we're seeing is that originally the Nasdaq was leading. 2-3 weeks ago we talked about every day how the Nasdaq was stronger and the Dow was weaker. Now all of a sudden we have seen a switch over ever since Amazon and last Friday. We see the Nasdaq getting hit harder and down more percentage-wise than the rest of the market. And that's due to happen anyways, because what you're seeing here is eventually whatever's strongest runs out of steam and has to come in a little bit, and that's what we're seeing from the Nasdaq. So the Nasdaq was down about 24 points today in total, and I'll go into that a little bit here, but the key here is, again, the S&P was only down 1.48 points, which is 0.1%, very small, almost unchanged. The Dow was down 3.33 points, and that's 0.02%. Barely down. You can basically call it a flat day for the S&P and the Dow, while the Nasdaq dropped about 24 points, which is 0.86%, which is a decent drop. You know, that's not a bad drop. And we're going to go into a few odds and ends here. This is the ES contract, and I want to show you all that, what's going on here. And just to summarize the day, this is what we saw, and I'm going to show you the Nasdaq chart. The Nasdaq basically opened up right here, and the futures were trading up a little going into the open. We saw the futures as high as 5-6 points pre-market around 8 o'clock in the morning, and we got some durable goods orders at 8:30, which initially sold the market off, and then it rallied back on those. But needless to say, the Nasdaq gapped up here about 2 points, so basically on the flat line. And right from the opening gap up, we saw a sell, and we saw the sell right down here, bouncing right off the moving averages, the 200 and the 50 right here, and right up again we saw a rally. And so the bulls tried to take charge here again, and the bulls tried to push the market up here again. And we saw the markets push up to new highs right here, especially on the Nasdaq. But then all of a sudden, come 10:30, we saw the reversal happen. And this was a strong reversal. You basically saw a hard sell right through all the main moving averages, straight down. Finally getting a little bounce back to those moving averages. And again, notice the two moving averages together offer way more resistance or support, in this case resistance, because it's not able to get through, than just one moving average, especially when it's the 200 and the 50 moving average. Now again, we sold off down, making new lows all the way to about 1:30, 2 o'clock, at which point the market started to rally. And we see the market moved up here, right to that moving average, pulled back a little bit, moved up to the next moving average, and pulled back, and traded right into the close, touching that upper moving average right there. Now again, it sold off right into the close a little bit, and the Nasdaq ended down about 24. But there was an attempt here to rally late in the day, like on Wednesday. And Wednesday again, it was such a powerful rally, you had to respect it. And that's the key here again, is that it was such a great rally like that you have to say, all right, well, let's respect that power. But again, today we saw the same thing happen, but this time was a little interesting. This time, the Nasdaq could not rally the same amount. The Dow could not rally the same propensity. Didn't have the same power behind that rally. And that's where things get very interesting, because you can look at it from two perspectives. One, yes, it did rally back a little bit, as we see right here, but it didn't have the same blow through the moving averages, the power that it did yesterday. So we could look at it and say, okay, well, the markets are a little weaker today. Okay, well, you could say that, yes, but at the same time, it did rally off the lows, and the Dow and the S&P really closed flat on the day again. And yesterday, they closed basically flat on the day too. So we're seeing an interesting movement here. There's a real fight between the bulls and the bears. The power of the market moving up against the sellers, the buyers against the sellers here. And the question remains, which one's going to win? And we talked a few days ago about how the four horsemen, well, it's now, according to Cramer, 3, Research in Motion, Apple, and Google. Amazon got dropped by Cramer, so it's only 3 horsemen now. But the power of those stocks were really pushing things up all through Amazon. Once Amazon didn't do so well, it really started to drop the markets. And that's what we saw yesterday, the big drop in the market yesterday. And again today, Amazon was down 50 cents, and Apple was down $3, and Research in Motion down 5. Baidu reported earnings after the bell, and we're going to get into that here now. But BIDU was expected to come in. It was down 170 on the day, so it didn't factor in. Amazon was up $10 going into earnings. Baidu had been up a ton going into earnings, but not today. It was actually down. It was up as much as $10 early in the day. Then nervous sellers came out and sold. So, well, what did we see here? Well, first I want to touch on Microsoft, because Microsoft came out with earnings first. Here's Microsoft. You guys can see it was up 74 cents, which is a sizable move for Microsoft for a day. That's a big move for a big stock like this. However, Microsoft blew away earnings, and you see it trading here 35.31 by 35.32. That's a huge move. That's a $3.50 move almost for a huge stock, a $300 billion market cap. They just blew away earnings, and this causes the futures to spike up right away. Well, now what happened next? Well, we have Baidu reporting at 5 o'clock, and it's about 5:30 now, and Baidu started to sell off. So originally we were saying, well, if Baidu beats here, we could have a full-on tech rally tomorrow. And then Baidu came in. Yes, it beat, and this is key, guys, again. Baidu did beat its estimates, but it didn't really beat by that much. And at this point, the market is so far ahead of itself on stocks like Baidu that Baidu is actually trading down about $13 after the bell here. And I want to show you the chart here, what I mean by it didn't beat by enough. Look at this move. The stock has gone in the last 2-3 months from basically $150 to $350, a high of $350 up here. What it's basically doing is factoring in stellar earnings. If it doesn't blast away those earnings, it's got to fall. And that's the key here. And Microsoft at least blasted earnings away. But Baidu did not here, and that was the problem here. And that's why you see Baidu trading down about $14 on earnings now after the bell. Now the futures are still up. Microsoft beat by so much that it looks like the futures are getting a bounce here, and we'll see. We'll still have to monitor that. The ES futures are up about 3 points after hours here at around 5:30 in the evening, East Coast time, of course. In any case, long story short, we had Baidu up a little too much. It came back down. Now I want to touch back on the Nasdaq, because the Nasdaq was a very interesting situation today. Yesterday we showed how we had gotten back above this 20 moving average. Alright, and again today on the sell-off we closed below. Alright, now tomorrow the question is tech going to be strong enough to push us up and get us back above that 20 moving average? I would dare say that if we close below the 20 moving average tomorrow, we could be in for a little bit of a fall here and take out this low. And again, this is based on the technicals of moving averages. At some point, if you keep on hitting up and down on this moving average, one day the bottom's going to fall out and you're going to have a sell-off. Now, if they can close this above, again, it saves it in the near term. And then we have to start watching for the triangle here to be broken to the upside. All right, you have a little triangle formation right here that we have to monitor, and let me draw that in here. Okay? Now, whichever way it's going to go, it's going to break out at some point, because these two lines are going to meet over in this area at some point in the next week or so. So it's going to break out to the upside or the downside, and now we have to really monitor which way it goes. Whichever way it goes, I think it has a sizable move in that direction. I would say there's generally more down falling than up move. All right, up move, we look for a double top move back to here, should we break over that triangle. On the downside, we look for the 50 moving average. So really monitor this triangle here. And I again gonna want to impress how moving averages, if they continually get hit like this, close a little bit below, close a little bit above, below, above, and so forth, eventually it's going to take its toll on that technical side of the market, and you're going to have a fall in the market. It's just not a healthy thing to continually bounce around in moving average. You need to either stay above and have this as support, or stay below and then fall. Okay? So anyways, long story short, that's what we saw today. We saw some craziness in the market. The chat room continues to be just phenomenal. I can't express how happy I am with how these traders, most of them beginning traders here in the chat room, have been doing. They've been making tons of money. It really is amazing. Very impressive, and I want to give them a shout out to say how impressed I've been with them over the last couple weeks especially. Okay? Here's the ES intraday chart, and you can see again we had a nice little V pattern in here, which is somewhat of an explosive pattern. And again, we did trail off here a little bit on the ES, but we still look to be positive, at least in the near term, on Microsoft's earnings. Now again, look at this angle here. This is generally what I call a bearish pattern. Angle up here is a bearish pattern in my book. It looks like it's setting up to have a fall. Okay? Now again, as long as it stays above that 50 moving average, that brown line is the 50 moving average, it technically could bounce back up and hit this 20 moving average. At that point, that would be a little resistance, and we have to monitor to see if it gets above or below. Should it hit, it might bounce down. Should it get through, maybe we have another move up. Alright, but again, what you really have to monitor here is a close below the 50 on the downside or a move up towards the 20 moving average. Alright folks, have a wonderful afternoon. It should be a very interesting day tomorrow. These earnings have really kept the market on its toes, and we will continue to monitor it and be back with another video tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.